Senator Brakey, Representative Gattine, members of the committee, thank you for your patience. I'm not a vaccine expert, and I'm not going to talk about vaccines, but I am going to talk about LD 1076. You've heard witnesses testify that it's duplicative of the federal system and duplicative of current educational requirements. Doctors have CME requirements that they have to meet. You've heard that a system like this would have probably a sizable fiscal note. It would be very expensive for the state. You know, I'm 65 years old, and one thing I've learned is life can be hard. It's been hard to hear the testimonies today from all these folks. And unfortunately, not all harm, not all tragedies are compensable. I spent 10 years as a workers' compensation hearing officer, having to turn down some people who had very serious harms, very serious injuries, but no connection to their work. And both of those were required in order for an injury to be compensable. We can have empathy, and we do have empathy. But when you look at cause and effect, you have to look at it from a scientific perspective. Science is a very disciplined method of thinking. It's very one step after the other. You exclude other possibilities. You know, we were talking about philosophy earlier. Well, there's a saying in the philosophy of logic, post hoc ergo propter hoc. After the thing, therefore because of the thing. And that's a prime example of a logic that is basically incorrect. Just because something happens after a thing doesn't necessarily mean that it happened because of the thing. It doesn't mean that it didn't happen because of the thing, but it doesn't establish, it doesn't prove that it happened because of the thing. There's a disease called mesothelioma. Its only known cause is exposure to asbestos. Mesothelioma shows up 20 years after exposure to asbestos. Has a 20-year incubation period, give or take. So just because something doesn't happen immediately after something else also doesn't mean it wasn't caused by that other thing. You have to take a disciplined look at the facts. You have to do double-blind studies where the researchers don't know anything except what they're doing. And there are later researchers who look at the data without the bias that somebody may have brought in if they knew that they were giving a placebo as opposed to an activation, things like that. Read the studies. Look at the sample sizes. Look at how well controlled those studies were, and make your decisions on that basis. Finally, as you know, I represent the Maine Medical Association. I've heard a lot of horrible things about doctors today. And you will believe what you believe based on what you've heard, but I refuse to believe that so many doctors in this state are unfeeling, are horribly rude, are bullies, don't have the best interest of the patients in mind. And the same goes for nurse practitioners. Ask yourselves those things when you evaluate the testimony, please. And that's all I have. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to address them or to get answers for you.
Representative Vashon?
With all the testimonies that we did hear today of children that allegedly became ill right after having a vaccination, have you ever had doctors come and be concerned that maybe it was caused by vaccination? What kind of discussions are doctors having when patients are showing up and saying, could there be a connection? Because what I'm hearing in this testimony from the patients is they feel hopeless from a consumer protection, and they talk of that theirs may have that wrong, but that there really isn't a reporting system. So whether it was related to vaccination or not, where do parents seek solace and comfort, and are doctors ever questioning, could there be a relationship?
Doctors are constantly questioning those things. That's why the research is done. You've probably heard today, I was in judiciary, so I don't know what happened in the earlier testimony, but you've probably heard about the study that was just published in the Journal of the American Medical Association within the last month or so, where they had a sample size of, it was either 65 or 95,000 test subjects. They do that research because they want to know, because they have the questions, and because they always question themselves. I've worked beside doctors as a nurse, and there's nobody I've ever worked with who questions themselves as much as doctors do, who question their own conclusions and question their own method of analysis to make sure that they're as certain as they possibly can be in the circumstance. I mean, are there human foibles? Yes, there are. Are there human failures? Of course. We all are heir to those issues.
Yes, Representative Basham.
Okay, so just in a follow-up to that, I'm hearing Representative Hymanson down there saying, of course, short of the fiscal note on this, this bill calling for more education, if there were, short of the fiscal note, do you think that this bill makes some sense, brought forward by consumers that have real concerns over figuring out whether there's a correlation to what happened to their child with vaccine or not?
We all want answers. We all want answers to those questions that puzzle us, especially to those questions that trouble us. This bill, I just get the feeling that the proponents of this bill won't rest until the education that it requires are exactly the points that they want to make, based on their particular view of the situation, regardless of any information to the contrary, regardless of any science to the contrary. We have a board of licensure in medicine that requires education of doctors, it requires continuing education, it requires testing periodically. A lot of people don't trust anybody in government. I heard that today people were saying the CDC is rife with scandal, and it may be true, I don't know. But at some point we have to trust somebody. When I cross the street, I have to trust that a driver will listen to the stories of malpractice claims and to take those cases and push them if they evaluate them and find they have merit, or they're likely to have merit.
So, and I don't want to belabor this because we're 10 hours into this public hearing.
And I'll be happy to shut up.
But I guess the thing that makes me wonder, and no one would ever mistake me for a doctor. I don't even play one on TV. I guess it would come back to, I don't remember what the exact number was, $35 billion in claims that have been paid out by this federal vaccine board. 3.5. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I multiplied that by 10 somehow. $3.5 billion I guess I don't know if it's the opinion that it's just like quit bothering us money, or if it's like, hey, something actually, you know, happened here as a result of a vaccine injury, and you have a legitimate claim to this. I don't know if the Maine Medical Association has an opinion on that, but I guess part of this is I struggle with is, you know, I don't know what the truth of all this is. I'm not a doctor. I'm not trained in all this. On the other hand, I think that's part of the reason why, you know, government should stay out of a lot of these decisions, because who are we? But I guess I don't know if that's something you can speak to. It's like, if why the $3.5 billion comes out of the claims then?
Well, the short answer is I don't know.
Yeah.
I've never been involved with that particular system. If I might give a little bit longer system, I was talking with a physician recently who treats wrist injuries. And we were talking about something called a repetitive motion injury, which used to be the basis for many workers' comp claims back in the 1980s and 90s when I was doing that kind of work. The science has advanced to the point where that is no longer considered a cause and effect type of situation, that repetitive work causes these types of carpal tunnel syndrome and things like that. So those cases basically were wrong. But based on what we knew at the time, based on the evidence that was presented to us at the time, we decided those cases in the way we did. Things do change, and education and knowledge advance.
Well, Representative Sanderson, then Representative Heinrich.
Thank you. I don't in any way believe that doctors don't care about the patients that they treat in any way. And I think they do care very, very much. But I guess I wonder, when you have such high rates, you know, we look on the bars, and I was looking at the numbers for last year alone, 47,228 vaccine injuries was reported to that website, and they say that's only a small percentage of the actual ones. And then I look at this piece of information from the Maine Adverse Event Reports from 1990 to 2014, and in 24 years, there's nearly 3,000 vaccine adverse events here in Maine reported to ours, and I mean, that's 3,000 Maine individuals. And I guess maybe I'm wondering, and maybe you can tell me, why aren't doctors questioning it more? Why aren't they pushing for more accountability? I mean, because if we had something on our grocery store shelves that was affecting that many people across our nation, you could bet that would be off our shelves so quickly, and that company would be put out of business. And it seems to be a big business issue for a lot of it, but instead we keep growing it, and I'm just really concerned about what we're putting in our children.
One thing you have to remember about those numbers is they're not proven established cases, they're claims.
I understand, but they're claims made by the individuals who were here with their children today,
who sincerely
who are
believe
living
yes.
this. They are actually living this experience. It's their child who was normal one day,
Yes.
and as Representative Foley said, less than 24 hours later, they were planning a funeral for their 2-month-old child. That's pretty salty stuff. How can we not really take this incredibly serious and want to do more?
I don't question for a moment wanting to do more. What I think we all have to question is we're reacting to something that is apparent, but not something that's established. And, you know, I've lived my life dedicated to proof. And, you know, perhaps that's too high a standard. for this committee and the legislature? I don't think so. I think you have to look at those kinds of issues, and those are hard decisions because it requires you to say, just as it used to require me to say, I'm sorry, Ms. Sanderson, you had a horrible injury. Unfortunately, it is not proven to be related to your work, therefore I can't grant you workers' compensation payments. Same thing here. Unless it's proven, how can we just pay without having something established as true?
But doesn't the creation of the vaccine injury fund over $3 billion and immunity for pharmaceutical companies, doesn't that lend a little bit of credibility to the fact that maybe these parents are really onto something?
Perhaps.
I would say yes.
I know. But perhaps not. Perhaps there was a business decision that in exchange for not having to defend these cases all the way along, we'll establish this system that will pay people for certain levels of evidence, and we won't pay people who don't meet those certain levels of evidence. Now, whether that constitutes proof or not is another question.
I can't imagine if there's anybody else who cannot be held legally liable for the life or lifelong injury of another individual from products that they've made. I don't know anybody else who is. Do you?
I'll give you an example. This legislature is protected by sovereign immunity. You're protected from suit.
I'm not practicing medicine or
No, that's true.
injecting medicine into a child's body.
Right, but you're making decisions that affect people's lives every day. The society has made a decision that your work is so valuable and so important to the orderly and safe operation of our society that we will protect you from liability, we will protect you from suit. That's essentially the decision that's been made with this fund.
Or product. There's a big difference.
I suppose. I mean, what product do I sell to my clients? I sell them policy, I sell them advocacy. I don't sell them an object. I don't sell them a substance.
Representative Heinesen.
Yeah, thanks. We were just talking about the vaccine quarter. You just really explained it, but we're trying, we go back to those four constructs. We're trying to do good, we can do some harm. Let's not forget the unbelievable good that these vaccines have done to our public health. Because they're not here, we have all the ability in the world to talk about the potential harm that the vaccines did. And I understand, I get the discussion in the room. I've been here for probably, I have to say, longer than anyone else in this room. I've stayed the entire time. So I've heard all of the discussions about what we've talked about today. We are still, I'm going to go back to that. We are trying to do a really good thing in the public health world of ridding ourselves of these terrible diseases. And along the way, we do harm. And we heard some of what I'm sure is harm. But opening up, when you have a trial of a drug and you ask someone to report every symptom that they have, as you said, you can't associate every symptom that somebody has after you take something with the side effect that somebody has, especially at an emerging developmental time. So it's, I think we go back to that. We're trying to do good. We have done really good. Maybe we've done some harm. But don't take away the good that we've done with vaccines.
Thank you.
I think in a work session.
Yes, Representative.
Yeah.
Representative
Doesn't matter. A
Heinesen.
lot of this conversation for the last 10 minutes seems to be a lot like work sessions.
Point taken.
Yeah.
Any additional questions?
Thank you all for your attention so late.
Representative Stuckey. As always, There's always one more from Representative Stumpy.
Thank you, Senator. I appreciate that. My question is to you and your colleagues for the work session, if you have suggestions or ideas for addressing the conundrum that I think many of us are struggling with, I would welcome the opportunity to hear them. But that's just a question and an invitation. I don't think there's I don't question the motives of anybody in this room today.
Nor do I.
I'm sorry, and I share a lot of the frustration and concern with some of the players in this game. I don't think it's the patients or the doctors who are you're the kind of the pieces in the game, and to the extent that those two groups can take control of the game, I think we'd all be far better off. So I invite you to help us understand how we might move in that direction.
Thank you.
All right. Seeing no additional questions, thank you very much.
Thank you all for your patience.
Is there anyone else here to speak in opposition to this bill? Seeing none, is there anyone here to speak neither for nor against?